Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the September 5th Public Safety and Justice Committee meeting. I'm Susan Ellenberg, Chair of the committee, and we are joined by Supervisor Wasserman, who is the Vice Chair. To get us going, I'd like to ask the committee members introduce themselves. Just let us know who's here.
Hi, good afternoon. Josefina Covarrubias from the Medical Examiner Coroner's Office, sitting in for Dr. Michelle Jordan.
Jeff Rosen, District Attorney.
Hi, Laura Garnett, Chief Probation Officer.
Good afternoon, Molly O'Neill, Public Defender.
Good afternoon, Matthew Fisk, Pretrial Services.
Good afternoon, Ted Zahner, Assistant Presiding Judge.
Good afternoon, Rob Coelho, Assistant County Counsel.
Good afternoon, Gary Hersig, Deputy County Executive.
And good afternoon, Sylvia Perez-McDonald with the Independent Defense Counsel Office.
Great, thank you all for joining us today, and let's go right into receiving public comment. This portion of the agenda is set aside for members of the public wishing to speak or submit a written comment on items not on the agenda. Before we start, I'm confirming that I have just one card. In that case, I will call up Scott Largent, and in accordance with our policies, you have 3 minutes to present a public comment.
Ready when you are, Nancy. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Lots of things to talk about, but a lot of this stuff I can't really talk about. So it's kind of it's a weird public comment today. Let's just say that. I had some information that was connected to my parents' divorce. I was awarded the state when I was 12 years old, and somehow people have been able to access my parents' divorce files. And I was a minor child, and they were able to access the probation reports. They were able to access the medical records, the psychological reports. And I find that very strange that that is possible with our courts. Now, I wasn't planning on really talking about Susan Bassian here today. I'm sure you're all very aware with what she's been doing to people. She went and got a restraining order against me. The woman got me thrown out of my residence. She got me evicted from my apartment. She got my roommate's attorney to disqualify her. She's gone after my family. She's contacted my ex. She's derailed my family law stuff. This woman has annihilated me. And I do appreciate that the county has stepped up to the plate to, in a way, protect me even though I'm not a county employee. I filled out a declaration. I explained what was happening to me. I don't have access to half of my property right now. I don't have access to my child's clothes, her toys. I mean, there's a lot of things that I don't have. Susan Bassian also accessed personal and confidential journals that I had. When I was 12 years old and I went through juvenile hall, I was abused and sexually assaulted in our juvenile hall. And then I went to schools that were called Cascade School, which were rehabilitation schools, which were basically like torture chamber cults. These places were brutal. Took me a long time in life. I couldn't talk to anybody about this stuff. And sooner or later, the time would have been right that I could talk about it. And she has stole that from me. And she's putting this stuff up online. And I don't really have anything to hide. I was 12 years old. I got in trouble at Redwood Junior High School. I brought a BB gun to school. It was a low-powered $19 Kmart special BB gun. They made an example out of me. They charged me with 10 felonies. They threw me in juvenile hall, and then they just sent me away, and they threw away the key. And it was just, it was sad what happened, but I am shocked that this woman is really willing to do all this to me. And I was her friend. I helped her out. But I'll tell you something, half of what that woman is doing is destroying our county, and they're accessing people's divorce files. They have moles in all your guys' offices. It's same with the courthouses. I would take this stuff very, very seriously. And what she's doing to me is it's witness intimidation. She's trying to destroy a witness. I'm a county council witness, and I'm also a district attorney's office witness. And it's just shocking. No one's safe from that woman right now, I'll just tell you that. It's brutal. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, confirming that we don't have any additional comment cards. Great. Then that takes us to the consent calendar, and we've got one card on consent for item 9, and that's Mr. Largent again.
Sorry about that. A little distracted today. On here, we, extra help for different departments that we have. Just a suggestion. I come up with a lot of different suggestions. I figure, each one of your departments, why not have somebody go to all the different meetings? I mean, Nathan Public Defender's Office just sends somebody to every single meeting, health and hospitals, even the city council meetings, just anything, because there's a lot of stuff everybody could pick up. I go to all these meetings, and I hear different things about departments, and when there's nobody there, it's like they're missed opportunities. And I don't think that would cost very much money to do, and I think it would be a really, really good idea. Many of your departments, I do think, need more help. We all need more help. And I wasn't really going to talk about this, and it's not necessarily off topic. My attorney, and I'm not necessarily going to say her name right here because she hasn't quite let the cat out of the bag, has been hired by the Public Defender's Office. She was an IDO attorney, a fantastic attorney, a woman with a big heart, just cares about people, it's just unbelievable. And you would think I would be upset that my attorney's now been hired by the Public Defender's Office. This was the best decision ever out of your office, Molly. She's just a wonderful woman. She's going to do amazing things for your office, and she just pays attention to things, little details. And we need help like that. People like me need help like that. The community needs help like that. It takes government way too long to figure these things out, but the Public Defender's Office gets 2 thumbs up on this. I know I've been a big critic for a long time, and I'm impressed. Thank you, Molly. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to note that item number 5 is going to be held to the next meeting per department request. And Supervisor Wasserman, do you have any other comments or changes to the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar, which includes items 8 and 9.
I will second that.
Thank you.
There we go. We have a consent calendar. Thank you. So we are now moving on to item 4, which is to receive a report from the Office of the County Executive relating to nutritional content of inmate meals and inmate jail survey.
Thank you. Martha Wapensky, Deputy County Executive with County Administration.
Marnie Posey, Director of DOC Correction Food Service.
So during the June budget hearing, the board asked that information be provided on nutrition content of inmate meals, along with food information from the inmate survey that was conducted in 2018. Here's what the jail survey looked like. These are the questions that were asked where an inmate had an opportunity to rate the various service like health care or programs, and you can also see that includes food and commissary. On the right are free-form answer boxes where inmates could provide a word or a phrase about the best and the worst things in the jail. It's important to point out at this early stage in the presentation that this is about the reports about the meals prepared by food services at the jail, and doesn't include commissary, which are food items that family and friends can order online and have delivered to the inmates. So this is the way the jail survey results stacked out. The table on the left has Elmwood in dark blue and Main Jail in light blue. The table on the right has the males in dark blue and females in light blue. As you can see, the spans from very poor to very good, and food is there at the bottom around poor. What I want to note here is that 24% of the survey respondents rate food as one of the worst things in the jail, alongside being in jail or staff attitude, out of cell time, and medical care. And during the analysis, when we took a look at the survey with regards to food, it was really unclear from the free-form responses whether the inmates meant the food services meals or the commissary. But comments about the food, whether it was food services or commissary, was generally about the lack of variety, the lack of taste, and the high salt and fat content. I'm not going to spend much time on the slide other than to say inmate meals are regulated by both Title 15 and the county nutrition standards for correctional settings. Meals are provided for 3,300 inmates 3 times a day, plus staff. We have the Title 15 requirements here and the county food standards on the next slide. And then more details are in the report about the different types of food that can be served and the amounts for each food group that are required. And then this one, as I mentioned, are the Santa Clara County nutrition standards for the custodial populations. So on our last slide here, I just want to make the point that there's constant trying to balance, trying to provide meal variety. We're doing that by establishing county contracts to get the best price for food. We're doing that by exploring new food buying opportunities and working to revise some of the meal options that may require different food products. As you can see on the upper right-hand part of the slide, there are special diets, medical meals, religious meals, and these require additional dietetic resources and alternative food products, which typically have a higher cost. And then bottom right, you can see we have special meals on specific holidays. So with that, that was kind of a broad, quick overview. With that, we can go ahead and take questions.
Thank you. Do you have questions?
I do, Madam Chair.
Why don't
Thank you very
start with
much.
yours?
And I assume we don't have any speakers on this item?
We do not have speakers on this
Okay,
item.
thank
you
you.
for checking.
I appreciate the research. I appreciate the work you did. When I read, what our nutritional standards are, and when I think about people in general like fried food better than not fried food. I mean, I'm not overly surprised at the results of this survey based on what's available in general. I don't know how many members in custody are health nuts. I don't know. Does this information, and Martha, you may or may not have this information, but do these results, are they comparable to what other jails find? Are we the first one to do a study like this? Have others done a study, and did the percentages come out about the same? Is ours much higher, much lower than other institutions?
That's a good question, but we don't have information like that.
Okay, through the chair, I'd be interested at a report back at a later date. If you give other institutions a call, and if they happen to have done, how do you like the food surveys, and how we stack up. It may be that the results are similar everywhere. It may be their results are better, but they don't have the nutritional restrictions that we have. I'm kind of interested in that.
Sure, we can get that for you.
If we're all serving the same stuff and we rate the lowest, then I can see there's something there that maybe we could do, a different provider, a different something. But I think there's a little more to this, and I don't just want to look at this and say something's wrong, because I fully understand the results. They didn't surprise me. Did they surprise you?
No, not at all.
Okay, thank you.
That's it?
That's it.
All right. Thank you. I want to add my appreciation for the report as well. It gets us part of the way toward what Supervisor Chavez and I had asked for. So let me follow up with a few additional questions. You mentioned, Martha, that this survey wasn't distinguishing between commissary foods and foods directly provided by the jail. Is there a plan to be able to separate that data going forward so that we do have a sense of what people are reacting to?
That's correct. And when the free-form answer boxes, that's the part that was not clear. It's very gray as to whether or not they meant food or commissary. I know the Sheriff's Office is here, and they have been asked to do another survey. I don't know if they have additional comments because they would be the ones conducting the survey.
Okay, sure. That, of course, would help us be able to be more responsive if we know what the specific complaints are. Hi, Melanie.
Good afternoon. So first, we would love to do the survey on a regular basis just to remind you, we wanted to use tablets, so we are waiting to roll this into tablets. We did work with Gary Rainey, who's a National Institute of Corrections consultant for the survey originally, and his best practice is to do the survey monthly, randomly with different housing areas, and to keep the questions the same,
Right.
so you get a climate sense of what's going on. But this is one of the areas that we did identify where we wanted to drill down and ask more specific questions. So not to change the questions, but to ask additional questions just to kind of get a better understanding. And if I could just go back to the previous question as well, when he did present the survey results to the Reentry Network, one of the findings that he told us was, if food is your biggest problem, you are in good shape, because all jails, the food, while there's always areas to improve, it's never going to kind of meet the standards that people are going to have of a home-cooked meal.
Sure.
So just wanted to add that as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that comment. And again, if we added salt and deep fried, the results would improve. So I think there's a balancing act here, because one thing we want to do, you know, in the whole rehabilitation process of the individuals that are incarcerated and helping them getting back into the community is provide healthy meals. We're providing more communication, be it phone calls or iPads or whatever. And if we're truly saying, while you're here in our care and custody, we want to make sure that you have a well-balanced, not super high salt, you know, protein, vitamins kind of food. And I don't know a lot of people, I'll defer to Ken Yeager, but I don't know a lot of people that would rate that highly. So I think it's great to have the information. I would like to see how we compare with other places. If you can possibly do apples to apples, I don't know if that's possible. But I think to that last comment that you made, if that's the worst problem in our jails, that we're serving healthy meals that aren't popular, I like where we are too then. Yeah, thank you.
Excuse me. Supervisor Ellenberg,
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yes.
may I comment?
Of course.
It might be a good idea for this group to hike on over to the jail and have lunch one day. I think that would be very telling. It's one thing to look at survey answers. It's another thing to see and eat the food.
I think that is a fantastic suggestion, and I would love to schedule that. We did have a meal, I and my team, at Elmwood earlier, several months ago, but it was specifically in the staff cafeteria or dining area, so I'm aware that we had different meals. There's also, I think, a little bit of a chasm between myself and my colleague on what constitutes healthy foods here, and I'll take issue later with the health nut
healthy.
expression. But every meal that's served in the jails, my understanding, is previously frozen, and every snack available is prepackaged and processed. How often are inmates receiving fresh fruit, which was one of my initial questions, and how often is a fresh fruit substituted with a sugary fruit juice?
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kick this off.
Okay.
The fruit is serving every day, the fresh fruit, and then vegetables, green salads 4 times a week. I'm going to have Marnie talk about the cook chill process.
Great.
And frozen versus the packaged snacks, et cetera.
Thanks.
So the cook chill process, we actually are preparing recipes, and we're using ingredients, fresh ingredients that go into those recipes. So it's not frozen. It's chilled and put into the refrigeration system for a certain amount of time so that we can use it on multiple calendar weeks. As far as juice, we don't substitute juice for fruit.
Great.
We use fresh fruit every day, sometimes up to 2-3 times a day.
Oh, good. And salads as well? I assume that can't be
Salads,
frozen.
baby carrots as well.
Thank you. I am glad to hear that. That wasn't clear to me in looking at the plans. I have one other question, not about the food itself, but about when it's served. we're seeing growing data that indicates that our bodies, all of ours, function optimally when our eating patterns are aligned with the natural circadian rhythm. And I was made aware also when I visited the jail that breakfast is often served at 4 or 4:30 in the morning, lunch and dinner earlier, and that studies that are showing us that chronic disruptions in rhythm, eating too early or too late, can decrease metabolic function and increase behavioral issues. So I'm curious to know how we're tracking the data on when inmates are eating. I assume we can look at scheduled times. How often are inmates skipping meals, particularly breakfast, if they have to go to court? And have we considered moving meal services so that they're more aligned with those natural circadian rhythms?
We can respond on data regarding missing meals, et cetera, but I wanted this group to know that we've been talking about aligning meals with circadian rhythms for a while. The problem is extremely complex in terms of operations. It has staffing impacts for both custody health and custody operations. That said, we've moved the acute psychiatric unit to call regular meal times based on circadian rhythms, and we're using that as a barometer as this group explores how to do that facility-wide, whether it's possible, feasible. As I said, it's incredibly complex. There are a lot of hurdles to getting this done, but it is being closely examined.
Thank you. I don't.
Thank you.
Another comment?
I
Please.
do. Thank you. And for full disclosure, I took my staff and I to a tour of Elmwood last month and went through that kitchen that provides 10,000 meals a day. I know I attend events sometimes when there's 2, 3, 5, 800 people, and people marvel at how the kitchen was able to bring out chicken to 800 people serving it at one time. What I've learned over the years, much like the recreation, is you can't just let everybody out at the same time to intermingle. Certain individuals can't be with other individuals, et cetera. And so what I've learned over the years, and it had to do with the time they were on what we called the sun deck, and each person was allowed an hour, 2 hours, whatever it was, but you have so many people there that you can't say, okay, it's recess, and everybody gets out and can be on the sun deck, everybody comes out. And I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe one of the reasons there's a 4:30 dining hour and a 5:30 dining hour and a 6:30 dining hour and a 7:30 dining hour is because you can't have all these people dining, being served, being watched, interacting at the same time. Is that similar to people when they get out to, I'll just say recreate is the best word I can use. You can't have everybody at the same time?
Yes, that's part of it, and the Sheriff's Office could chime in as well. That's part of it. The other major part of it is movement to court, moving hundreds and hundreds of inmates to transportation hubs, distributing them to court. That for an 8:30 a.m. calendar and a 1:30 p.m. calendar, those movements have to happen well in advance.
On a daily basis?
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Is there anybody from Sheriff's that can respond?
Only complexity I was going to add is also we have seen an uptick in specialized diets. So it's not only distributing meals to all of those individuals at one time, but ensuring that the right medical or religious diets are distributed at the same time. So it's a work in progress. There's a lot of elements that are involved, but
incredibly complex, as you said.
Yeah, but the goal is to house them where they can recreate together, and if they can recreate together, they can eat together. So it all ties into kind of the work that we're doing with housing.
Gotcha. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you very much for the report. Appreciate it. Item 5 is being held to the next meeting, so that takes us to item 6. I have one comment card. This is the item to receive a report from the Probation Department relating to the Juvenile Justice Annual Report for calendar year 2018. Why don't we have the report, then public comment, and then questions from the dais.
Madam Chair, do you mind if I introduce the item?
Please do.
Okay, great. Thank you. So before us is the annual report that we do annually, and this is for calendar year 2018, so we got off the fiscal year cycle. Even though our department publishes it, it's a very robust collaboration, and you can see all the entities up there that participate in this collaboration. So it is a system overview, not a probation overview. And then I just want to take a moment to thank our staff so much. Morena Cruz, Dr. Holly Child, Craig Carpenter's up there have just done the most amazing job on this report. They continue to get better and better every year and take input. So please, anything anybody sees this year that you want to see fleshed out next year, just call it out and we'll do it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again for having us back to go over the annual report from all the juvenile justice stakeholders. As you know, this isn't a probation report, although we're presenting. It's a collaborative report with all of the juvenile justice partners. And so therefore, it's not a comprehensive view of every service that every partner offers, because the 100-page report would turn easily into a 1,000-page report. But it is a high-level kind of macro view of trends. It gives us an idea of the needs and challenges facing the youth and families in the communities that we serve. And it's a great tool for us to talk about how we can do the work that we do better. And so we'll go through and give some results, and I'll turn it over to Morena Cruz.
Okay, so we'll start with this slide here. So again, just like Holly said, this actually is a collaborative report. So here we're listing some of the agencies that we work with, in particular child welfare, the DA's office, the public defender's office, and so on. So here is where we get to the nitty-gritty of the data that we're presenting. So this slide here is actually showing us the trends for the last 5 years in terms of the number of arrests and citations, number of kids that they were referred to juvenile hall, those kids that they were admitted to the hall, and also the number of petitions that were filed. So if you look for 2018, we actually had a total of 368 arrests and citations. These numbers are all based on duplicate accounts, meaning that a kid could actually have more than one referral per year. From those referrals, we actually had 1,340 kids that they were referred to juvenile hall. We had a total of 1,212 kids that were admitted, and we had a total of 1,535 duplicated petitions that they were filed for the year. Two major things to take away from this slide here is that if you look consistently across the last 5 years, numbers have remained pretty constant. I mean, you see some differences that you will expect, but nothing very drastic. And the second thing, when we are comparing 17 with 18, will be that in 2018, we had less referrals than in 17. But what we're seeing is that the actual arrests and offenses that these kids are committing, they actually tend to be a little more serious, meaning that they're penetrating the juvenile justice system deeper. So we just, as we go along in this presentation, we'll talk a little bit more about that. And there's a second presentation that will tie into all of this too. So for arrests and citations, we're looking here that the major areas where these referrals are coming from would be property crimes. Those would be things such as burglary, first degree, burglary, second degree. That would be followed by felony crimes against people. A couple of examples of that would be felony assault, felony domestic violence, and other crimes which are identified as traffic violations, obstruction, or resisting arrest. Something else that we took a little deeper dive was looking at the number of property crimes when we're just taking out felonies. So if we combine the felonies of property crimes with the felony crime against people, we see that all the arrests and citations for 2018, that accounted for 42%. So again, that means that kids are committing a little more serious offenses than in previous years. The other major thing that we're also looking in our department, and we continue talking with all of our system partners, is the disparity gap. And so for 2018, we actually saw this trend that we're going to be talking along this presentation. But when it came to disparity, Black and Latino youth were actually 9 and 5 times more likely than white youth to be arrested. And that's actually an increase from 2017 numbers, where they were 7 and 3. So this just reinforces what I just said in terms of the arrest and citations being a little more in-depth. So we see here the breakdown as to the type, and felonies account for 48%, followed by misdemeanors with 40%. So again, the big emphasis is as a community to try to come up with better ways to try to address the issues that these kids are facing, just to try to improve, or decrease the likelihood that they're committing these offenses, or that they're lesser than what they are right now. This slide here is actually showing us the geography in terms of where these felonies and misdemeanors are taking place. Something that we did compared to last year was separating felonies from misdemeanors. So if you look at the top chart there, you will see that all of those zip codes, they're actually from San Jose, with the exception of Gilroy, which came in number 7 with 61 felonies. When it came to the misdemeanors, we see the same story, except that we also see Morgan Hill. So both Morgan Hill and Gilroy, they're on the top 10 for misdemeanors and status infractions. The top 3 zip codes where most of these felonies are taking place will cover areas such as Valley Palms, Mayfair North, and also Seven Trees. And that's pretty much the same thing for the misdemeanors, except that you swap some of those places. But something that was that we noticed is that Gilroy continues to be the top zip code when it comes to actually for the misdemeanors, and that was for both 2017 and 2018.
Thank you. Through the chair, if I may. Thank you. On the comments you made about Gilroy and Morgan Hill, obviously there's 100,000 people in South County, there's 1 million people in San Jose. These are actual, like the 95020 number of felony counts, the 61, that's the actual number of felony counts. These are not percentages.
Those are the counts. Yes,
okay, so in South County, which is 1/10 the population of San Jose, 2 of the top 10 are from Morgan Hill and Gilroy.
Yes. And something else to add in here that we actually didn't include on those charts is the out-of-county numbers. Okay. So
I'm sorry, you said out of county?
Out of county. So we excluded out of county because there's no particular zip code that actually shows more of these felonies or arrests that are taking place, right? So we actually excluded them from both, but if you were to include those numbers up there, for felonies, they will actually come up in number 3.
Are these addresses where the individual called home or where the felony occurred?
Where they live.
Where they lived?
Yes.
So somebody, I'll just pick Hollister. If somebody came up from Hollister, committed a crime in Gilroy, it would not show on this.
Right. It will show us out of county.
Thank you.
And so just to finish on that dot there, so for out of county, the number was 7%. They account for 7% of all the arrests, for all the referrals from 2018, and that was a similar number to what we had in 2017. So this slide here has lots of information. This is kind of a comprehensive look as to what needs these kids are facing, and so we are pulling data. Some of this data is actually coming from the JACE, which is the Juvenile Assessment and Intervention tool, which has been validated by the NCCD. And we use this tool actually to look at risk and criminogenic needs for these kids. So some of those numbers will come from there. Something else that we also do is look for child welfare history by going into the child welfare system and checking for that, just to kind of get that assessment. And some of the other information is arrest data that is coming from probation data. So I'll go over to some of those highlights that we want to present on that slide. So let's see here. In terms of demographics, we're looking at 78% of all kids who were arrested. They were 69% were Latino, and 78% they were male. And that's been pretty consistent across the years. We've seen the same patterns. Girls reported more family history problems compared to boys. Probation, like I said, continues checking for child welfare history checks. And so what we found out is that 48% of the kids who come in to probation actually had one referral where they were the alleged victim of child welfare at one point or another. We also see that girls reported more abuse and neglect and trauma compared to boys. Boys and girls, they had the same, similar numbers when it came to educational issues, such as school inadequacy. That would be looking at things such as lack of cognitive ability or capacity to succeed in school, or intellectual capacity, or achievement problems. And so those numbers were pretty consistent for both, so we didn't see any differences in gender there. Boys present higher criminal orientation compared to girls. Substance use accounted for about 43% for boys and 47% for girls, so this is another area that we need to focus on. And probably one of the biggest things for me personally is these behavioral health issues. So 33% of girls actually attempted or thought about committing suicide versus 10% for boys. And 81% of girls and 63% of boys had significant issues regarding depression, anxiety, and other emotional issues, and that was a 10% increase for girls and 1% for boys compared to data from 2017. So again, this shows us that these kids are facing very complex issues, and we need to address those in the community. So this slide here is focusing on the kids who actually are referred to juvenile hall. So we have the trends for the last 5 years, and the blue part, it shows you the number of kids that were actually detained. The gray top of the chart, they show the kids that were released. And if you were to add up those two numbers, then they will show the total number of kids that were referred. On the bottom there is telling you the percentage rate of those that were detained. So if you look at 2014 and 15, you see that the rate used to be about 82%. And then for the last 3 years, it has been between 88 and 90%.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to ask a methodology question because I'm having trouble really getting a sense of the numbers. Why are you using duplicated counts as opposed to unduplicated? It's hard, especially with the chart with the top 10 zip codes, to have a sense of whether these crimes are being committed by only 10 kids again and again and again, or hundreds of them.
Well, I mean, you want to try to address that?
So in this particular case, a youth could be brought to the hall more than one time in any given year, which means a decision is happening multiple times, even if it's with the same youth. So this chart really is a measure of that decision-making process and not so much of the individual youth. So it's really important for us, if you have a kid that came in once, they come in a second time, that decision-making process, you want to capture that as well. So this encompasses all of those decisions. We do behind the scenes look at it unduplicated to see what those numbers look like. They look very similar in the end, but so this is to give you an idea of every single incident that a child was brought to the hall, even if that was more than once, what were those overall decision-making outcomes? What did that look like? So.
Right. Well, I understand what the duplicated count means. It just doesn't give me as clear a picture of how many kids we are talking about.
So you mean individual kids?
Individual,
okay.
Unduplicated children that have contact with the juvenile justice system in a given year.
Mm-hmm. So we do have those numbers not in this presentation, but we can definitely forward those on to you.
I would like to see those in an off agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
And a lot of those numbers actually, they're in the report. So in the report, we actually try to break it down by unduplicated so that we know how many unique kids we're talking about for each one of those sections as well.
Then I'll make sure that I find that in the whole report as well.
So again, like I said before, 2%, there was a 2% increase on the kids that were actually detained comparing to 2017. So if we break that down a little bit further, we will see that, as stated before, from the 1,340 youth that were referred to juvenile hall, we detained 1,212 kids. Again, those are duplicative counts, so that's 90%. And from those, 987 kids were actually detained until their detention hearing, which is an 81%. So the reasons why these kids were admitted, that the top 3 will be property crimes, felony crimes against people, and return from other status and courtesy halls. Again, some of those examples will be charges such as burglary, assault, and misdemeanors, sex offenses, that kind of thing. When it comes to disparity for the kids that they were detained at the hall, the story is the same. We actually see an increase from what we reported back in 2017. So Black and Latino youth were 17 and 9 times more likely than white youth to be detained compared to 13 and 6 from 2017. So this data here, it comes from our system partners at the DA's office in terms of petitions. There were a 10% increase in petitions filed in 2018. In the top 3 reasons, again, residential burglary, robbery, and car theft or stolen vehicles. And then you have those end values there for reference. On the chart there, you can actually see the trends. So 2016 was lower, and then from 2017, it has been going up. We also saw the disparity gap increasing at the number of petitions that they were filed. And so for Black and Latino youth, they were 15 and 8 times more likely to be petitioned than white youth, and that it's an increase from 11 and 5, which was pretty consistent across the 3 entry points into the system. So I know that was a lot of numbers, but to summarize, the things that we probably want to focus on would be that the overall arrests and citations are down by 3% compared to 2017, so we saw less number of total referrals to probation. However, we also saw that kids that are committing those crimes, they have like higher felony charges, so they're committing crimes that they're a little more sophisticated. We also saw that there was a 10% increase in petitions filed. And finally, the biggest thing probably for us would be the disparity gap that we see across all entry systems, where numbers for Latino and Black youth, they actually went up compared to 2017. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask for the public comment, and then we will go ahead with questions. Scott Largent.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Don't worry, Laura, I'm not going to start going to all the juvenile hall stuff. Yeah, don't worry about that. In regards to, watching some of the presentation here, I'm just curious, now that we've gone electronic on everything with our court system, how can we determine that records are being sealed properly in juvenile hall? And I'm not sure. I know my parents, when I was 10 years old, when I was very young, they paid the money to have the record sealed. Is there a way to figure out if this is happening farther down the line for kids now? If they make mistakes when they're young, I'm not ashamed about what happened. I'm just wondering how this is all getting out later in life. I don't have as much to lose right now in a way, but when I am fully employed and my life's back together and I have custody of my kid, this could be a big slap in the face, and you're trying to explain things. So I'm just curious if the courts might want to start figuring that out. I know in my parents' divorce file, the probation reports were attached as an exhibit. So, and same with the medical records. But how could somebody access this, and is there just a glitch in the system? I understand that the medical records are in manila folders that are in there. How is this stuff getting out? Now, I ask a lot of the county. I know I come here and complain a lot. Is this something that you people can look into and figure out how she got access to that? If she has somebody in your clerk's office, I think that would be pretty scary. I don't want this information. It's out there. I talked about it before. But we need to figure out how it's gotten out. I mean, we really need to. So thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions or comments, Supervisor Wasserman?
No, thank you. I don't have any. I appreciate it. It's very educational every time. I will throw out again, if you get a chance to put page numbers on, that would help, because when I had a question, I couldn't remember what page it was, and I was writing it down, trying to get you back to a previous screen. That was last time. I don't have any questions this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate the report as well and have just a couple of questions. A trend that I saw across a number of the charts is that we were on a decrease from 2014, 15 to 16, and then in most categories back up. And I wonder if you have a sense of whether the number of crimes being committed was greater or the enforcement for some reason became tighter or more aggressive. And I don't know if that's something that you are even able to measure.
So the way that we look at our data is we look at it by youth. So we perhaps look at it a little bit differently than maybe law enforcement or, let's say, the attorneys for the public defender's office or DA. They're really looking at, crimes committed and who's involved in that crime. And we look at it kind of youth-focused. I will say that the number of youth were down, but the number of youth that we see that are committing the more serious crimes has increased. So we are seeing less overall kids, but we're seeing kids who are committing more offenses. Now, we can't tell you offhand if that translates into an increase or reduction in the number of actual crimes being committed, so, i.e. victims and those particular incidences. What we can say is we did look at the data for the first half of 2019, and it's down lower than it was in 17 and 18 for serious offenses and overall offenses. So there's some promising
That's good news.
hope that maybe they'll stay down, but we don't know what that will look like. Time will tell over the rest of the year, but those numbers are looking lower. Ask us again in 6 months. Kids still have 6 months of the year, so but things are looking promising, and we're hopeful. And I think a lot of our partners and stakeholders have really been working together on a lot of solutions based upon with the increases we saw in 17 and 18. So,
thank you for that, and particularly your comment that you're looking at this from the child, the youth perspective. And I want to just follow up on that a little bit. We know that youth who receive medical or mental health services in juvenile hall often lose that coverage and care when they return home. And probation initiated a medical outreach program to guarantee a warm handoff to a medical home. And in 2018, they provided outreach to 1,680 youth. It'd be good to know what overall percentage of youth receiving medical mental health services that is. My feeling is that it should be 100% of youth getting these kind of services and hands off. How can we make that happen and make sure every kid is getting the services and continues to get what they need?
Yeah. So that's a good question. And one of the things we've been really intentional about is the difference between criminality and need. So we certainly have youth that have high needs in insurance, food, just high needs and lower criminality. And so that's part of the insurance, having them referred to a medical home when they exit. And the youth that we're talking about are youth that would get a letter of reprimand in the mail saying, you stole something from 7-Eleven, that's not good. If you do it again, you'll be in more trouble. So we do have ways that we're working with behavioral health and child welfare and DAC and all kinds of ways where there's no wrong entrance so that we can still attend to the need without bringing them in our system. But if we have a kid who has those needs, who is stealing a candy bar from 7-Eleven, they really don't belong in our system. They really do belong in another system, and so, or in no system at all. And so that's the cross-agency work that we've done and have been doing, is to just make sure that we're not pulling those low-end kids in, because their success rate is, 97, 96% of kids that get a letter never reoffend. So you don't, and we know when you pull kids in, they do worse. So we're really careful about doing that, at the same time looking at need and just addressing it through public health, through behavioral health, through different agencies.
That's an incredible statistic. Thank you. Any other comments on this item? Yes, Sylvie.
Thank you. So I really appreciated the report to your team. Thank you so much for doing that. It's probably one of the best reports I've read, because it does provide a lot of substance and a lot of detail to give sort of meat to the bones, if you will, for the numbers and the figures and the statistics we're reading. I also found it extremely helpful that it continues to reaffirm sort of what we know about the complexity of the work we have in juvenile justice. And the figures that stood up for me are the ones that also sort of track the science in terms of who these children are, right? And so when we're looking at the statistics, you know, the ones that I read were 65% of the youth, when we interview them, acknowledge that they're really being impulsive, which is consistent with where they are. And 57% were with an accomplice. And so we know they're peer involved, and they have negative peer pressure is significant. And one of them that really struck me was 70% of those kids that had learning issues and academic problems were still not getting the learning support and the academic support that they need. So yes, I think there's an important distinction between need and criminogenic factors, but it is very important for us to understand that the school to sort of the delinquency pipeline is so much of what we have to respond to. So those details were very evident to me, and I really appreciate it, because I think as policymakers, as decision makers, we really needed this kind of guidance so that we know how to respond effectively to continue to meet the objective, which is public safety for sure, because we don't want these kids to be back in the juvenile justice system, and we can't do that unless we know how to do that. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciated those comments, Sylvia, and the recognition of how valuable this report is. So I want to thank all of you again. And moving on to our final item, since it is a study session, I'm going to ask for public comment up front before the presentation so that we don't have a break in the middle and can really hopefully move into a more robust and flowing conversation. So for item 7, I have one card, and I will call back Scott Largent.
Thank you. Ready when you are, Nancy. You know, that was neat to actually hear what Laura Garnett had to say about not pulling kids for minor crimes in. You know, a little slap on the wrist things. Normally they take care of a lot of these things at school. In my situation, it wasn't technically an illegal knife or a handgun. It was a low-powered $19 BB gun. And I was born and raised in Saratoga. I hopped on a city bus. I went out to El Camino where the Kmart was at with a couple of friends, and I purchased a BB gun. And I brought it home. You know, we'd go in the backyard, we'd go on trails and stuff like that, just kid stuff my father did growing up, stuff it was, you know. I was charged with what everyone else did. And I understand that. I understand that you loan the BB gun to somebody, and they go do dumb things like break windows and shoot somebody in the leg. I mean, this thing wouldn't even break a window. But that's what I was charged with. I was charged with what everybody else did, even though, of course, I purchased the BB gun. I was at fault. But what ended up happening after that was 9 months in juvenile hall, 2 years in a group home. I mean, it was extempore. And I became a ward of the state. The state took custody of me. My parents had a lot of money. They tried to do everything to keep me out of the system. They tried to do everything. You know, I learned my lesson. I didn't get in any real trouble later after that. But I think it was something that should have been handled at Redwood Junior High School. I don't think it should have ever, I don't think I should have ever been stuck in juvenile hall. And when you charge somebody with 9 felonies, they put you with the big kids. You know, I was a little kid. We didn't even fight on the playground in Saratoga. We pushed. Go to juvenile hall, they hit. You know, it's just a different world. So people make mistakes, but that's good to hear, Laura, that a lot of these kids aren't being dragged in like that. You know, I'm not a bad person. I made a mistake. It should have been taken care of at school. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, so this is the beginning of our second study session, this time on juveniles under 18 who use a weapon in the commission of an offense. So who's going to start or
I'll go ahead
introduce
and
this?
kick us
Great.
off.
Thanks, Martha.
The departments presenting here today met to cross-collaboratively review the data and discuss available programming to address the problems. Each department will present their data and initiatives for about 3 to 5 minutes, but the full details are in your packet. We'll be presenting in this order. Probation will kick us off, followed by the district attorney's office, followed by the public defender's office, and then the sheriff's office is also available here if there are questions. Chair Ellenberg, you also indicated that a discussion following the presentation could include the identification of any gaps or potential solutions, and so we're prepared to have that discussion as well.
Perfect, thank you.
With that, I'll hand it over to probation.
Hi, still here. Thank you for those of you who weren't here last year, probation presented this report. It was a 5-year summary looking at those youth who committed serious offenses. And serious offenses, we'll get into that in a second, of how that's defined for the purpose of this report out. But we're back to do an update because we did see an increase in 17 and we did see an increase in those serious offenses, and we thought it was really important that we come back and take a look at 18. And so this report, just to be clear, is looking again at referrals. So it doesn't equal offenses, it's just the number of referrals that were received by the department. And the methodology for this report could potentially be slightly different than how other departments. I know this has been an ongoing conversation of how we unify, how we talk about this, and I think we're getting closer to looking at the same things in the same way. And so we're starting to get a little bit better in having these conversations. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague.
Good afternoon, Craig Carpenter, Research and Evaluation Specialist with the Probation Research Unit. So this afternoon, we'd like to quickly run through the 6-year summary of serious offenses. And as Holly said, this is a specific list of serious offenses as opposed to the full list of offenses in the presentation you've just received. So over this time period from 2013 to 2018, there were 2,840 unique youth referred just for this list of offenses, and a total of almost 5,500 referrals. So in 2018, just over half of the youth referred were aged 15 to 16, and the majority were boys at 77%. This slide is showing the 6-month referral trend. So again, that specific list of serious offenses. You can see the increase in 2017 and 2018. The orange bar on the end gives you a snippet of the 2019 data. So this is the first 6 months of the year where for the offenses combined, it appears to be trending down. So this slide shows you the referral agencies where the referrals to probation originated from. The reason we've grouped them in this way is because San Jose Police Department obviously covers a much larger area and a much higher population. So you can see increases in referrals, particularly from that department, but also from the other referring agencies. So this slide is moving from referrals to youth who are petitioned. So of all of the referrals received by probation, a subset will be petitioned in court. You can see that the rate increased in 2017 to 77% and held stable there in 2018 as well. We took a look at zip codes again for the serious offenses and could see that it was consistent in terms of the number of out-of-county zip codes. So the gray bars at the top indicate the referrals where the youth lives out of county, which is held relatively stable over this period. And this has already been mentioned this afternoon, shows you the number of referrals per youth. So you can see that from 2016 to 2018, the percentage of youth with 3 or more of just these specific offense referrals increased from 9% to 19%. Now, the next 3 slides pick out 3 offenses in particular that have been talked about a lot recently in the county. So robbery to begin with, and it's similar trend across all of them. So 2017, 2018 were both up. The first 6 months of 2019 is down so far. So robbery, carjacking, again, a similar trend, 2017 and 18, and then 19 so far is a little bit lower. and burglary, a similar trend as well. So to give you a summary, as I've said, referrals increased 2017 and 18 across all of those specified offenses, and it seems so far that 2019 they are lower. We've also looked at that proportion of youth with more than one of these serious offenses. So that has increased and typically can be part of a single incident or crime event. So probation is continuing to monitor referrals and has also brought about some additional treatment options, which Holly will talk to you about now.
Great. Just to be considerate of your time, I know we're on a short timeline. I won't read all this to you, but if you look in your packet, probation and our partners, we've been working really closely on using interventions that are very focused on the needs of these specific youth. And those things that we talked about earlier in the annual report, a majority of these youth that fall on these serious offenses have very complex mental health needs, behavioral health needs, educational needs. There's significant substance use issues that start sometimes at a very early age, higher percentage of child welfare involvement. And so these kids really have complex needs, and we're looking for interventions and approaches that have an evidence base behind them, and really being specific about age and gender and a lot of those responsivity needs. So I won't read all the details to you, but we have been really paying very close attention to the interventions we have available and monitoring the data and tracking the success of youth in this program, keeping an eye on any modifications that need to be made. With that,
With that, we can either take questions now or continue with the studies session and save questions for after.
Happy to keep going.
Next up are representatives from the District Attorney's Office.
Can you hear me now? Good afternoon. My name is Marissa McKeown. I'm with the Crime Strategies Unit at the District Attorney's Office.
My name is Carolyn Powell. I am the supervisor of the Juvenile Unit at the District Attorney's Office.
So our data is going to be based on what's available at the District Attorney's Office. So to distinguish from probation's data, we're looking entirely at cases that have been referred to the DA's office, and we're looking at filed juvenile petitions. The factors that we analyzed compared the number of charged minors to the number of charged offenses, and in some instances you'll notice some contrast between, in some instances and some crime types, very many more counts than charged minors, which indicate that a single minor may commit several of these offenses in a single charge petition. And so I'll point those out as we go along. But it is in fact limited to the cases that are brought to us for a charging decision, and our reports may not match arrest data because not all cases result in prosecution. So with that, ours is a little bit backwards from probation, so the most recent is on the left and going backwards in time to 2012. Here we have violent offenses from 2012 through 2018. As you can see, and as we saw in probation's data, we saw notable increases over time in the amount of charged robberies and carjackings over the last several years. And then we also saw an increase in 2017 and 18 in assault with a deadly weapon. Not so much in the numbers of charged shootings as outlined in those particular code sections, but very often those are charged as attempted murder or in some other crime type. So in the next slide, you'll see number of times that these charges were filed in any count on the petition. And what is notable here is the sheer number of carjackings that we saw in 2018. That was the focus of a lot of discussion with our system partners at various different forums last year. And you also see quite a large number of robberies being charged in 2018 and 2017. But otherwise, you see a general increase in the number of charged assault with a deadly weapon in 2017 and 18. And those numbers in those crime types are relatively flat over time. Now, we pulled out for the first time in this presentation in response to the request of this study session, weapon offenses. So we have brandishing a weapon, dirk or dagger, brass knuckles, loaded firearm, and minor in a possession of a handgun. And what I want to point out in this is number of minors charged with minor in possession of a handgun, as you can see going from right to left, has gone up considerably in the last few years, and that's actually consistent with our adult population. So it's not unique, and I study both our adult side and our juvenile side, that we have seen a huge increase in the number of handguns that are involved in arrests, both in the juvenile population and in the adult population. So that is just an interesting thing to note, I think, for purposes of reviewing this chart. But if you look at the number of times that these charges are filed in any count on the petition, as opposed to the number of minors who are charged with them, you also see the reflection of the increase in number of minor in possession of a handgun. Now, of course, as you look at this slide, what you will probably notice, which is interesting, is that the number of times that we've charged a knife count, or a felony knife count, meaning the dirk or dagger 21-310, has gone down since 2012. And that's just interesting as somebody looking at this data, that as our handgun use seems to be more prevalent in the number of times we've charged it, our number of knife charges have gone down. So I think that's an interesting takeaway from that slide. Yes.
Just a clarifying, what's the difference in the carrying a loaded gun and minor in possession of a handgun?
They can be charged in the same case. It just will depend. In the charge 25850, it would require that the gun actually be loaded, whereas there's no such requirement for 29610. So a lot of it is going to be factually based depending on the circumstances of the event. But sometimes you could have both of them charged in the same incident. Did you want to say anything else about that?
I also had a quick question. This just says charge. Do you have sustained charges as well?
We don't have that in this slide, and we've been asked on prior occasions to try and come up with disposition data, which is challenging to do. It's not an automated feature of, unfortunately, our record management system. So in order to come up with disposition data, we would have to manually do that, which is quite labor intensive. I will say that my colleague, Carolyn Powell, has undertaken this gargantuan task at various times and does have a certain amount of that data in focused cases, but not in response to a broad request over this number of years. But that is certainly something that is possible. It's just challenging. It's not automated, unfortunately.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. If you could go back one slide, please. Thank you. So in the 2018 column, the last two items, 25850, 29610. So a person carrying a loaded gun, a minor carrying a loaded gun, would be charged with both those?
You could. You could. So yes,
Okay.
but not always. It's going to depend on the facts of the case, which one you would elect to do. And you could charge both. So if you are a minor who is carrying a loaded handgun, you would also be a minor in possession of a handgun under that particular code section.
Okay, and what would help me in the next rendition of this in the future would be totals at the bottom of these five offenses that you've picked, just so I could compare year over year. They may have moved around a little bit, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
But I wonder about total offenses. That would help me as far as that goes.
Definitely.
And as far as the duplicate and unique, some of our slides say duplicated, some say unique. I'm not sure on here. I think what you said, if I heard you correctly a few minutes ago, was that there is some duplication in here where you could have one individual charged with two offenses.
Yes.
And then if that person was charged twice during the year, 4 of these offenses could be attributed to one person.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Our primary offender zip codes are exactly in keeping with probation's data. In fact, we're likely pulling from a very similar data set. This reflects the zip codes of our minors. And as you'll see, both in the minor in possession of a handgun, which we've added to this chart, and also in our robbery, carjacking, and felony assault categories, our most frequent offender zip code is 95116. And then you'll see some of the other frequently appearing zip codes of 95122, 95111, and then other. You'll see on robbery on the left-hand side is 95020. So as Supervisor Wasserman pointed out earlier, it also appears in our data, our South County zip code. Trends and observations are, it's very difficult in such a short presentation to come up with huge overarching themes, but some of the things that we have seen as frequently contributing or coexisting with our violence involving a weapon are burglaries. There's the trend of stealing firearms in a burglary and having possession of a stolen firearm when we do recover guns. Gang violence is, of course, coexisting with many of our robberies and carjackings and shootings and other assaultive crimes. We saw an increase in shootings in the city of San Jose drastically in the last 10 years, which is likely to be an overall theme that is a kind of subtext to all of this. And many minors have multiple arrests. So as was mentioned by the probation department, we did see, and I'm referencing here on this slide, when San Jose PD looked at their own data in spring of 2019, they found that 31% of juveniles that were of their data, there were 31% of juveniles arrested 2 or more times during an 18-month period. And so they tried to take a deeper look at frequently arrested youth, and we are working on a committee to try and understand that better. What is being done? Lots and lots of things. I think what's great about our partners who are here today is that we're trying to understand our data collaboratively. There's a committee on juvenile high-risk offenders. We're working with our juvenile justice system partners to root causes, collaborating with probation and the police, and are looking to put more resources into our impacted zip codes. Specific to the DA's office, our community prosecutors do focus on the most heavily impacted zip codes, not by accident, by design. So any other comments by my colleague before we end?
No, I'll leave it open to questions, though. Although, did you want to continue first? And then,
If there are questions, I'm happy to. Them now? Nope. We'll keep waiting.
Up next is the Public Defender's Office.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the board. So in light of the information presented thus far, the question is, what now? Where do we go from here? The good news is that there are ongoing efforts already taking place amongst the juvenile justice partners, as well as a tremendous amount of collaboration through the various JJSC, the Juvenile Justice Systems Collaborative subcommittees. The Public Defender's Office has included a report by the Justice Policy Institute and the National Center for Victims of Crime for your consideration, as we felt it could help inform our efforts and propel us forward. Some of the key highlights from this 2018 report include the need for individualized interventions. We know that the offense alone does not tell the whole story of each child, and so our interventions must be focused and must be based on the individual needs of each child and their families. One example of an important intervention that is an individualized intervention is MST, which stands for multisystemic therapy, which was also just highlighted in Dr. Child's presentation earlier today. The important thing to highlight about MST is that it's evidence-based and it's community-based. MST can serve any child irrespective of the offense, since it's based on behavior and not the offense. It has been used for 2 decades, and it was studied in 2018 in an international setting, and researchers have found that whether the juveniles showed extreme violence or not, the intervention was effective for both groups of youth. In other words, there was no difference in overall treatment responses. As Dr. Child highlighted earlier, MST has existed in our county since January of 2019, so it is recent, but currently the program is limited to youth under the age of 14. While it is an inexpensive intervention, it is an effective one that we hope our county will consider for older youth as well as youth who commit serious or violent offenses. Another highlight came from the victims who were part of the focus groups for this report. And while certainly the victims who participated do not speak for all victims, we know that restorative justice programs continue to grow nationally. And as I'm sure the staff at the Victim Offender Mediation Program and others can tell you, most victims do want to see the juveniles who make up our communities get the services that they need so they do not reoffend. The research has been consistent for decades now. Confinement increases the likelihood of recidivism. And so we hope that as a county, our reaction is to wrap the children and families with intensive therapeutic interventions rather than to resort to confinement. After all, these children will return to the same neighborhoods, the same environments, the same socioeconomic situations that may have contributed to the challenges that led them to us in the first place. We hope that as we move forward to make sure that we keep perspective as juvenile crime trends fluctuate. Less than 2 weeks ago, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, which is an office of the Department of Justice, as well as the National Institute of Justice, which is the research, development, and evaluation agency of the Department of Justice, released their bulletin, Juvenile Arrests for 2017. This bulletin documents recent trends in juvenile arrests using data from the FBI's Uniform Crime Report. Overall, juvenile arrests have declined for more than a decade, but patterns vary by demographic group and offense. Findings show that in 2017, law enforcement agencies arrested more than 809,700 persons younger than the age of 18. This was the lowest number since at least 1980, and 70% below its 1996 peak of nearly 2.7 million. However, juvenile arrests for a small handful of offenses have increased, namely auto theft and murder. Robberies have increased by only 1% nationally. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to include that bulletin with our presentation today, but it was literally just published in August, and so it was published before we were able to include it with our presentation for you. It is available online, however, and we're happy to get it to you at another date. Ultimately, this should not be a battle over statistics or criticism of juvenile justice partners, but about how we together can develop focused, long-term interventions that are developmentally appropriate for our youth, irrespective of the offense, and in collaboration with community-based organizations who we have heard repeatedly are ready, willing, and able to work with our youth in the community. As our United States Supreme Court has pointed out in a landmark juvenile case, JDB versus North Carolina, quote, "Our history is replete with laws and judicial recognition that children cannot be viewed simply as miniature adults." Thank you.
And I think I neglected to introduce us at the beginning. Let me start by just saying or add, I'm Damon Silver. I'm an assistant public defender. I'm the administrative assistant over our juvenile team. And
I'm Nasreen Yunus, and I'm the juvenile supervisor of our juvenile team in Public Defender's Office.
and we're happy to answer any questions now.
That also concludes our formal presentations.
Thank you. I want to thank all of the departments very much for bringing all of this together in one place. I want to just share a couple of observations that I made during the report, and then I would like to be quiet and hear from all of the experts as to where you think we should be going next and what's still missing. My first observation is about the multisystemic therapy that you mentioned. I know that that's evidence-based and has been shown to be effective, but even that is reactive to whatever the traumas that have already been experienced by the youths who commit crime. And if we know why they are, if we know what the root causes are that are discovered through the multisystemic therapy, how do we make sure we are going back far enough to ideally avoid the ACEs or whatever the other traumas are that lead kids to this behavior that then warrants the need for MST?
I think one of the great things is on the Race Equity and Prevention Work Group, there's a tremendous amount of effort currently on focusing on prevention. So we have a lot of the middle schools right now and high schools involved because they're seeing some of the behaviors before the youth ever come to us. And so I think that there are efforts in trying to see how we can flag those youth and still try to divert them from coming into contact with us.
I would argue that we need to go far younger than middle school to look at kids' very early years, their attachments to caregivers, their housing stability, economic status, early health care, all of that, to me, has such an influential role in shaping the circumstances in which a child finds themselves even by the very beginning of middle school. Is there any attention to really looking at the super, super little ones and families?
Absolutely. So the reason it's under 14 or 14 and under, depending on which document you're looking at, that's intentional because it's a collaboration with child welfare as well. And they can come in, child welfare, through differential response, through a closed case. So again, in this group, we're looking specifically at need, not at offense. And it's so family specific that for it to be effective, your family has to be involved. And so it is very expensive. And so that's why it isn't primary prevention, which we're also working on throughout all of our systems in a very, very deep way. This is to get to those little kids too, and that's why it's not serving the other ones that that the public defender would like served, because we really wanted to. It's just such a targeted intervention on families. Is known to work so well with just that the family dynamic. It does work better on younger kids than older kids, and so that's what we're trying to do.
Sure. And I think that's a tremendous program, but again, it's reactive.
It is.
It's when a kid is already in trouble at 11 or 12 years old.
I want to be clear. This is in collaboration with child welfare, so the kid could be 2. The kid could be 5. I mean, they can come in through the child welfare door, and they can come in through the very, very early child welfare door. It can just be a referral to child welfare, and they can put that kid into MST. It's a joint contract paid for with RAP reinvestment dollars. So absolutely, I totally agree with you. That's why I'm saying it's so family intensive. It works better on the younger population. So they don't have to be in middle school. They can be 7. They probably can't be 2, but they can be 7 or 5 or whatever. And they do work with the whole family. So even if it's targeted on an adolescent, any younger SIBs in the family also benefit.
Supervisor, if I could just also inform the committee of a few prevention collaboratives that are happening within the county that are working exactly on what you're requesting. And so through the County Office of Education, we actually have a school climate work group that's looking at prevention. The Race Equity Prevention group is part of it, Office of LGBTQ Affairs, OCC, the Probation Department, the District Attorney's Office. Many of our partners from behavioral health and public health are also present. And what we're really looking at is the multi-tiered system of support that looks at all schools in Santa Clara County and implementing sort of that triangle, right? So what are the services that are available to all youth, and both behavioral health, housing, what do all of our families need? Then what do some kids need, because they're already starting to show signs of either behaviors or need that are not being met by all of those base needs? And then what is the very top of the triangle of kids that need things like MST? And so we are working with Tia Martinez, who's a researcher who does work on school to prison pipeline work, really to figure out what are those systemic places where we can intervene early so that we prevent kids from ever getting into the justice system, from ever having a referral. And we're doing that work now. We've been doing it for a couple years, but we're now starting to leverage our relationships and other things that are happening in the CAST system that are also happening in through trauma-informed systems of care with behavioral health. And we're really starting to bridge those gaps to figure out how do we do this systemically across the county.
Thank you. You mentioned in that very quick list
Sorry.
that you were, no, I appreciate it, Marielle, thank you, working through the schools in Santa Clara County.
And First Five is also a partner.
One of the pieces that I didn't hear you mention or departments is school-linked services, and I would imagine they are part of this, but we don't have school-linked services in every single school district.
We don't. And so what MTSS is a framework that says what services or programs do you have. So behavioral health is there as school-linked services, but also as we have all of these other county services that perhaps could be linked into specific schools who have needs. And we're really looking at if school-linked services is the model that we would like to see move forward, how do we figure out how to create that model at all schools, or how do we at least patchwork all the different services that School-Linked Services has available for schools that are not part of the School-Linked Services network? So we're absolutely looking at that as well.
Wouldn't the answer be to make sure that all school districts are part of school-linked services so that we're not creating new
I would say
or
that
patchworky systems?
that's an answer for the board to provide.
I'm aware. That's why I said it. Thank you. That's really helpful. Somebody, now I'm losing track of which report happened when, mentioned avoiding confinement altogether. I know that there's talk specifically about avoiding confinement, at least as a start, for all girls. There are counties, San Francisco, I think, first among them, that are talking about closing down their juvenile halls entirely. We do know that the juvenile halls, including our own, has been at about a third capacity for years, therefore making it much more expensive per kid. Are any of us in this county very serious about moving toward a no confinement at all program policy?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that. I'm not, and I'd never support that. And I also think that what you're hearing about San Francisco is not true. Where are they going to put the kids that they arrest? They'll just call it something else.
Unfortunately, they'll probably send them to places out of county, which
That's
I think
correct.
is not as healthy. So
Yeah.
you're right. If they're
Yeah, they'll
just
send them to
moving
Alameda.
kids, then that's not an answer. But if they are really reducing 80% of the kids that are still in juvenile hall, sending some out of county, that I agree isn't a good thing. But if we can avoid confinement altogether as opposed to just sending them out of county, is that something to work toward, other than in the most serious cases?
I would say that even in the report that we submitted, there are certainly, and the authors concede that there are a very small portion of youth where confinement is appropriate and necessary. But I think what they're encouraging us to explore as policymakers is, it seems that their argument is that juvenile crime has declined because we have offered a lot of youth for nonviolent offenses the opportunity to receive interventions in the community. And so now maybe we can look at even kids that are committing violent offenses based on, again, not the offense, but their behavior and their needs. And can we have, a majority or many of those kids service in the community? And I thought one thing that was really interesting about the report that stood out to me is that it's sort of they called it a self-fulfilling prophecy, where if we are under-resourcing the community-based organizations, then it looks like they're not doing well, and so they don't have the confidence of the victims and the community members. And I was really surprised that there was a $90 million grant. I can't remember the name off topic, but it's offhand. But only 4% of the $90 million apparently went to community-based organizations. So I've heard a lot from community-based organizations that they said, we're already working in Elm Rock, we're already working everywhere, but we don't feel like we're being, properly funded or utilized as much as we would like to be.
What's the source of that $90 million grant?
It's the Board and State Community Corrections Youth Reinvestment Grant, and the County Office of Education was awarded a grant, along with the City of San Jose Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force. The County Office of Ed will be administering the grant primarily to serve South County youth. So we actually hope that that grant will have an impact on those misdemeanor cases that we're seeing that have been continuing. So I believe the only two jurisdictions in San Jose, the county also received part of that grant for the Office of Women's Policy Young Women's Freedom Center. So 3 grants were awarded to our jurisdiction with the information that I currently have.
Totaling $90 million?
No, my understanding is $1 million for each award, and there's 3 years. So
where's the rest of the money?
Huh? Where's the
Where's
rest of
the
the money?
rest
The
of
rest
that
of the
$90
state.
million?
It was a statewide.
Statewide, not all
statewide.
for us.
$90 million statewide.
So I'm sorry, on page 58 of the report, an example that they included here is they said, as a part of a series of reforms to juvenile justice system, $90 million grant was the Youthful Offender Block Grant, YOBG, that was set up to assist counties to serve youth once incarcerated by the state. And then they indicated that only 4% of that money went to community-based organizations.
Got it, thank you.
So while it was intended to shift it from the state to the counties, unfortunately, the groups didn't really receive the money that were willing to work with our kids, that even those that commit violent crimes.
Thank you. I wanted to just comment for those listening that, and to thank Damon and Nisreen for the presentation, but Nisreen has been our juvenile supervisor for the last 3.5, going on 4 years, and she still handles cases and is pretty much in court every day, so her sort of working knowledge of what's actually happening, and the same is true of Ms. Powell. They're in court every day, and so they really do have a good handle on what's happening. And if I could, I wanted to ask a question of Ms. McEwen. And I'm always struggling to try and understand the data, but you had slides related to the number in 2017 and 2018 of carjacks and robberies, and it's clear we've had an increase in those numbers, but in trying to understand them, is it the usual practice to charge one minor believed to have committed a carjack with both robbery and carjacking? Yes?
We very often do that, yes.
Okay, and is it also the case that they will likely only plead to one or the other and not both?
Yes.
Okay. I just think that's important to sort of recognize when you're looking at the numbers, because those numbers look like there were that many carjacks plus that many of robberies, when in fact one taking of a car with force could be charged in the alternative. So just making that point. Yeah. Thank you.
And Supervisor Ellenberg, I thought our system partners, we've been discussing why there might be an increase in carjacks. One thing that some folks have been talking about is the fact that, previously when kids would steal cars, they would use a shaved key, or with the ignition, the wires and so on. But now with the new cars with the push start system, the kids can't do that anymore. So I don't know if that's contributing to the carjacks versus kind of the old school auto theft, or getting into an abandoned car, or just stealing a car and driving away without someone being actually hurt. But I can tell you that that's being discussed. I know San Jose Police has talked about that, as have we. So I don't know if because of the change in technology of the cars, if that has somehow contributed, but it's an interesting question.
Yeah, that really is interesting, and I know we wanted to focus a little bit particularly on those more serious crimes and how we are addressing those. And that's an interesting piece to me too, that as the overall numbers go down, we're still seeing this subset increase. Are we seeing a difference in demographics, in kids who are doing this? Are they, or a different criminal style? Is there something unique about the kids that are committing these more serious offenses?
I think the DA would agree with this, that we have seen kids that are meeting up on social media, and they're sort of like burglary crews, so to speak, so they don't meet the legal definition of a gang necessarily. I think we're all trying to grasp what's happening, but certainly last year when there was the uptick, a lot of our kids that were younger, even 13, 14, I handled a 12-year-old myself, a case, but it was very frustrating because there were adult co-participants. So I'm convinced that, the adult was likely running the show.
Any other thoughts on that?
have thoughts in general. Does it have to be just on that? Because I can wait.
I want to hear all your thoughts.
No, you don't, trust me. I don't even want to hear all my thoughts. So one, I have been corrected, so I want to go on record as being corrected. The age for MST is 12 for the primary. They'll serve younger if the primary is 12, and evidently we tried to get it down to 10, and they wouldn't do it. We'll be having that discussion again with Seneca because they should go down to 10, especially with the new law about not being able to charge youth under the age of 12 with a crime. They're going to have to go lower. They just are. So sorry about that misunderstanding. And then because we're talking about youth who commit crimes with weapons, I did want to take this time to announce, and it wasn't publicly available to put on the agenda, but we have been notified that we're awarded a $3.3 million Burns JAG grant. Is this okay, Rob, or no? Yeah. Okay. He's looking at me. I'm like...
Got in a little trouble at the last minute.
I do have a one-page executive summary that I'll put in the back if anybody wants to take it. It gets ratified by BSCC on, I think it's the 12th of September, if I'm not mistaken, and we're funded as of October 1st. So it's going to be a straight ramp up. And the target population is the youth that we're serving has to be the youth who held the weapon in the commission of a crime. So it's a laser focus on this exact population, and it has almost all of the components in the report that Ms. Eunice was referring. So it's all individualized plans based on that unique individual's needs. So I just wanted to say that, super exciting.
Congratulations.
And then just as far as kind of everything else we were talking about, just a couple of thoughts. I do think I don't even think we need to sit and debate whether or not we have more arrests for burglaries and property crimes because of new technology. We just do. We have the rings now, and people have video. I mean, I know we do because our officers ID kids in video every single day. And we have social media, and our kids love to do burglaries and then post themselves with their guns that they stole in their hands. So it is happening, and we're seeing that in the pattern. So a lot of times when kids have multiple offenses, some of those are a year old, 2 years old. I mean, it's a whole new dynamic that we're having to deal with, and so I'll give you an example. We were passing out burritos to staff during probation parole pretrial week, and a kid was brought back around through where we were by San Jose PD. So this kid had been in for a group of property crimes. He was probably maybe going to the ranch. If he was in custody, he was likely going to the ranch. And they had just found him as a principal in a murder from 2 years before. And so we're still housing the same kid. Now do we move him to a different unit? But I mean, this happens not infrequently, and San Jose PD especially has a high solve rate. They do. And sometimes it's later. So I do feel like, kind of like sex offenders, this wasn't usually true with kids. They usually, like when you haven't done any intervention, and then you find out they've been doing something for 2 years, but you haven't tried anything, it looks different. It just does. I don't know what it looks like. I'm not proposing it to know what it looks like, but I do think our interventions and how we address it look different. So I just want to call that out.
Supervisor, what was most surprising to me about that is that I guess I want to come when you pass out burritos next time. I didn't know that was a thing that happened here. So I think that in some of the questions about the statistics of how many robberies, or is a carjacking charged this way, or is a minor in possession of a gun versus a loaded gun, what I would say about that is the methodology has been the same every year from 2012. So the fact is, minors in possession of guns dramatically increased. Robberies increased. Carjacking has increased. We've charged things the same way for the last 20 years. I think in terms of where we're moving as a county when it comes to confinement, Supervisor Ellenberg, you were mentioning what's talked about in San Francisco. And I think that, as you pointed out, we have about a third of the number of kids in juvenile hall as we did 8 years ago. And I think what we've done is, you might say that for 2/3 of the kids that we used to put in juvenile hall for offenses that were not violent, we don't do that anymore. And the kids that we have in juvenile hall or the ranch are kids who've committed very serious crimes. And so, as Nisreen pointed out, every expert, no matter how progressive, acknowledges that for very serious, that confinement has a role for serious offenses. And I think that's where we are in this county, and people may debate as to whether or not, we should try to reduce even further the number of kids that we are confining. But I think that for the most part, we all agree that we want to use confinement as a last resort.
I agree that, first of all, I think our county has done a really great job over the last decade in trying to reduce unnecessary detention, and that the focus is on effective interventions and the sort of smarter use of detention whenever it's necessary. Our mandate, and I think our responsibility, is to continue along that trajectory. And I think Nisreen's points are well taken in terms of, are we, or have we maximized our opportunities to use the less restrictive alternatives and utilize the most effective strategies? And I think that remains to be our challenge, because I think we have done well enough, and we should be proud of it. But I think at this point, we now know a lot more about what we can do better, and that's where we should be focusing on.
If I could add that I think as much as we have reduced the confinement rates, a remaining and troubling statistic is the disproportionality that persists. And at that point, I'm not convinced that we've done everything we can or need to do. And I would encourage us to really stick to this mission, because until we start addressing those disproportionality rates, I think we're going to have a lot of trouble earning the buy-in, the respect, and the partnership of the community that we're really here to serve. I would, as a kind of a correlate to that point, is I would say, I think any decisions that we ultimately make, we need the community at the table. And I know that those conversations frequently actually do happen during the juvenile justice work we're doing in all the committees. But it's so essential, because we hear over and over again from the community about the concern that us as a group sit in these meetings and discuss the community, but the community itself oftentimes doesn't feel a voice in those discussions. And we saw that play out in recent months, in particular at the Mayor's Gang Task Force meeting, and really the community reaction to some of the discussion that took place at that meeting was rather startling, and hopefully eye-opening for many of us, of the importance of involving the community in all these decisions and how we sort out and implement strategies, rather than simply arriving at the community and telling them, we're here from the government, we're here to help you.
May I add something to that?
Yes,
Sorry.
Clara, here's the voice.
Carolyn Powell from the DA's office. Nisreen and I actually started a new committee this year called the High Risk Youth Subcommittee for the Juvenile Justice Systems Collaborative, REJS Subcommittee. And one issue that we're running into is actually an inability to share information about juveniles between our partners. And one of the things that we're trying to do is to look at a group of youth that we have identified as being at particularly high risk, and being able to go back and do, where did the first warning signs come out? What was their third grade teacher seeing and saying about them in terms of their attendance at school or their ability to participate in class and things like that? And going through what was their progress through the juvenile justice system, what sort of dispositions were imposed, what was the outcome, and having a real sharing of information from people who saw all different sides of that youth. And because of the confidentiality issues around juvenile records, we're running into some roadblocks in actually getting together to share that information. This actually started with the data from San Jose Police, in which they identified people with 2 or more arrests during an 18-month time frame, which involved weapons. And from that, we sort of grew that and got a list of 141 youth that during that 18 months had 3 or more arrests that we considered sort of high risk. They involved weapons, and they had at least some auto thefts, carjackings, robberies, and they had been through the system a number of times. One youth had been arrested 33 times. From that, we took...
Excuse me, through the chair, you said one youth had been arrested 33 times in an 18-month period?
Yes,
Not 33 charges, 33 times.
33 arrests, different arrests, by different agencies as well. From that, we took a sample set of 19 because we knew that we couldn't go fully in depth on 141 youth. Because of the information sharing problems that we're having right now, really all I can do is indicate what I've been able to come up with from our records regarding those 19 youth. But what I can tell you of those 19 youth, 17 came from our county, 2 were from other counties, so I don't know what their juvenile backgrounds were in the other counties. But of the 17 from our county, 15 prior to becoming justice involved in terms of formal petitions being filed. I can't speak to whether or not they'd had other less formal interventions with probation, but I had a police report in which they were either listed as a missing child, were the victims of child abuse, or were listed as at-risk children. So there are mechanisms for identifying these children before they come into systems, either through DFCS or juvenile justice system. And what we need to be focusing on, I think, in a prevention mechanism is how do we identify those children and get them hooked up with the appropriate services without getting them system involved, without having to refer them to DFCS or to juvenile probation, especially for the younger ones who are no longer eligible for juvenile justice system intervention. To the extent that we can prevent that, that's great. Now, the other thing that we see from these 19 youth, 4 of them are now at DJJ. 4 of them are now in adult court, either through having been transferred or having picked up adult offenses because they have now aged out of the juvenile justice system. 2 of them are pending transfer hearings. 3 of them are at the ranch right now. And one of them had 16 petitions before he reached the age of 15. So for this higher risk population, we need to be also doing an in-depth look at what do they need. Once we've failed at the prevention, what level of intervention do we need for these youth? And how can we identify the individual needs of each of those particular youth? And that's what we're hoping to do through being able to do this collaborative information processing, but we need to be able to do that.
Is Data Zone through the County Office of Ed part of this collaborative? Because I know there's been a lot of talk, not specifically about the juvenile justice system, but between school districts and healthcare providers, mental behavioral health, opportunities to be able to connect kids that way. And of course, many of the school districts are concerned about student privacy from that perspective, but knowing suspensions, expulsions, kids' early records is helpful too.
Once we were able to get this group of 19 and then get the information about where they were going to schools, that is on our list of next steps, but like I said, we run into the roadblock, and so we're hoping to work that out through a standing order from the juvenile court. That's in the process between county council and the juvenile justice judges. But I just wanted to let you know that we are looking at this from sort of a lifelong track of these youth and how can we intervene, and then once we have to prevent them, and once we have failed at the prevention, what do we need to do at the other end?
Yeah, I would just, Madam Chair, if I could comment on that. County Council's working really, really diligently with the juvenile court, and this has been at least one of their attorneys' almost full-time job is this exact information sharing. So I don't want it to appear that somebody's just being an obstructionist. This is County Council doing what they should be doing to protect the kids' rights, and we are working through it, but it's not a lack of effort and energy being put into it.
Oh, I agree, and I think it's its own conversation and meeting. Does anyone have any final comments? I want to thank all of you so much for this conversation. You've given me a couple of homework items to follow up on, but one of them requires some more input too. I really take to heart the comment about our community-based organizations needing to be able to work at capacity to serve kids, and we know that the community service is impactful, and there is evidence to show that keeping kids in community is good. Looking at the balance of dollars, how do we spend less money running a very expensive juvenile hall, knowing that we're not going to close it and that it's appropriate for a small number of kids, but how could we reduce expenses associated with that so that we can spend much more money, more of those dollars in the community with the organizations that can do that better restorative or therapeutic work? That's my question back to you. How do we, not to answer now, but how do we cut that down? Is it a different facility? Is it, I realize that's a huge question, but that's a huge amount of money that goes into running a juvenile hall. On my end, what I can look at also is, in the meantime, what are the organizations that need to be funded more robustly and able in order to do this work? That's something that I can follow up from a board side, as well as asking about school-linked services, expanding that. I know that we are actually looking for a new director now to replace Cha C, who has left. So that's a big piece as well. In hearing about the weapons, clearly increased access to guns, even with our very tight state regulations, continues to be an issue. Is there more that our county can and should be doing to restrict or limit gun access? And then finally, of course, the earlier we can intervene, the more resources we can invest at the very beginning of the pipeline. And yes, that's my pitch for early childhood intervention and programming, but I think we're all making clear that that's what works. So before we adjourn to the next PSJC meeting, I want to just share quickly that my staff had a great time at the hot August nights at Juvenile Hall, enjoying the classic cars and really seeing the kids' performance at the talent show competition. It's nice that there are some highlighted moments in that otherwise not very cheerful environment. I also want to invite everyone up here or in the room to think about attending the annual Domestic Violence Conference on October 18th. Registration is open, and unless there are any further last announcements, we are adjourned, and I look forward to seeing you all at the next meeting on October 3rd.
Thanks, Martha.
I was about ready to bring it up there for you.